Hey guys, it's Josh at Cardinal Offroad. Today we're going to try to fix the rear of my Jeep that I've messed up. So when I installed the coilovers, everything was fine. I installed everything at full bump. Everything's good, nothing hits. The issue I've run into is when I set up my bump stops, which I recently did after I've completely done everything else, is they hit at full bump, but when it articulates, they're not going to touch. And the reason is because your axle is going to kind of let down on the one side that's drooping, and then it's going to pull that other side away from the bump stop. It's okay on the front because I'm running highline fenders, but in the rear I'm not running highline fenders. So the issue I'm having is my tire is going to get up in the fender, and then the second issue is the rear lower link is going to hit the frame. There's a couple things I can do to fix this. I can notch out the frame, kind of raise it up and kind of figure out what I need to cut out and then kind of piece some metal in there. Or I can cut the lower link off, fab up a new lower link bracket, and then just kind of move the lower link down just a little bit. It's not a whole lot, maybe a ½ inch or so, and that's the choice I'm going to go with. So I'm going to take this lower link, cut it off, and then show you how to make a new one. Alright, so we got everything out of the way, now we're ready to cut the bracket off. Before I do that, I went ahead and hooked my plumb bob back up, marked my axle where it's at right now. That way when I cut the bracket and that axle moves around a little bit, I'll know where it needs to be. Alright, so I went ahead and got the bracket cut off, got my hind joint or lower link in the spot where it needs to be. Now I made sure my axle was plumb bobbed, and the reason I want to make sure this stuff's right so I know how long of a bracket I need to make. You want to leave a decent amount of room back here for your hind joint so it's not all up against it, because you got to remember this axle is going to be moving quite a bit around. So when it comes to making your axle brackets or your frame side brackets for your hind joints, there's a couple of different ways you can do it. You can just run kind of pretty much a flat on both sides, just kind of round it around, and then you can just cover the bottom. But I'm going to put a little bit of detail in mine just so it doesn't look too ordinary. The first thing I'm going to do is measure from the axle to the hind, to the end of the hind, and then I'm going to add another inch. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want about 1 inch of material surrounding the whole hind joint. So what you don't want to do is have real short area like a 1/4 inch here. What's going to happen over time, that's going to rip that bolt out. So I'm going to measure that, and then I'm going to cut me some cardboard, and then I'm also going to cut out for the axle tube itself so it kind of fits around the axle tube. That way you have a lot more space of welding instead of just a flat piece butting up against. Alright, so I went ahead and cut a piece of cardboard, and I think it's about 3 inches, yeah, right at 3 inches in width. And that's going to give me, when I put my hind joint in the center, that gives me 1 inch up and down on either side of the hind joint. I want to start from the axle, and the reason you want to do that is because if you start from the hind joint in, you might not have enough material because you want to cut into it. You got to remember you want to cut in for your axle tube. What I did is I found a cutoff wheel. The axle tube is 3.5 inches. I found a cutoff wheel that is exactly 3.5. Laid the cutoff wheel there, and then obviously marked it. And then that gives me my start point. So now I can put this over at the axle, lay it on there, run it down, and then wherever my hind joint is, I'm just going to draw a circle with a marker, and then that'll let me know where I need to drill my hole at. Alright, so we got the first one done. It looks pretty good. Now it's a good idea when you're doing these cardboard cutouts. You want these things to be pretty precise because you're going to use this to trace your metal out at the end. Now that I got that side down, I'm going to go ahead and repeat the same process for the other side It's going to be a little bit smaller, but everything up front here will be the same. Alright, so I went ahead, I got the other side done. Like I said, the exact same thing as far as the front goes. The only difference is it's a little bit shorter because it's at an angle. That's why it's pretty important to have your link in the right spot, so you can get your angles and stuff correct. When you're setting up your links, obviously you want them to be in a straight line with your heim joint. So I got that side in. Just a little bit. And that looks pretty good. Now the next thing that I want to do is I want to cover the bottom. Now the bottom is what is going to make the width between the sides for your heim joint. So it's about 2.5 inches or so in between here. So I want to cut a piece that's going to be 2.5 inches. That way it goes in between these pieces of cardboard. Okay, so this will be the bottom piece. Like I said, this is the width of the outside for the heim joint. That way when I have my sides on there, the heim joint fits in there good. And then I cut this at an angle to go with the axle itself, since the heim joint or the link is going at an angle. And then I made this long enough to where I can fold this end up to go up in front of this bracket a little bit, just for a little bit of a skid plate. Alright, so I have all 3 pieces. Next thing I want to do is I want to cut this out of one whole piece. The reason is I don't want to make these all separate and then have to try to hold them together and weld it. My thoughts are, what I'm going to do, if I can lay these out here right, it's going to be something like that. What I want to do is cut this out of one piece, and then I'm going to cut lines in the metal, bend it, and I'll weld the bottom. And then obviously right here I'll cut that, bend it up, weld the bottom, and then it should, when I'm complete, be something like this. Should be pretty strong. And then once I get it all together, once it's like that, I'll put it in the drill press and I'll drill my hole completely through. That way it's lined up. And then I'm going to do some kind of drain hole. I'll probably just use this. This is 3/4, so I'll probably just put a 3/4 hole right at the bottom just to keep some water out of there. Alright, now that it's all taped together, you can see what it's going to look like. I'm going to go ahead and lay it flat on a piece of 1/4 inch steel, trace it out, and then I'll just go ahead and cut the outline out. Once the outline's cut, then I'll do these marks, and then I'll fold it, weld it, drill it. We'll be good to go. The outline all cut out, and then I also did my relief marks. You always do your relief marks in the opposite way you want it to bend, because if you do it on the side you want to bend, you'll only be able to bend it as far as the width of the cut. So I cut there, there, there. I'll fold them up, and then I'll fold this last piece up, and I'll weld it all together. Alright, so I got the sides bent up. I'm going to go and weld them. Anytime you weld anything like this, make sure you put some kind of spacer in between there. Otherwise this is going to want to pull towards the heat. So I put a socket in there, some washers. Then I'm also going to put a C-clamp on the outside, just to make sure that everything stays in place. Then I'm going to weld down here, and then I'll fold over this top piece and weld it. Next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and put a drain hole, and I'm going to put it pretty much right underneath where the heim joint, the center of the heim joint is. So there you guys have it. This is pretty simple to do. The nice thing about it is once you have the one side done, take your cardboard cutout, fold it the opposite direction, and then you'll have an exact matchup for the other side. Now it does take a little bit of time, but once you get it cut out, it goes pretty fast. Obviously having a plasma cutter would make this go by even faster. I think this is really nice if you need to make a special bracket, especially if you need your bracket to be at a certain angle, or you just need it to be a different design. If you guys have any questions or comments, let me know. Hit that thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe.